Growing up, I had a friend who lived a few houses away. He was the only kid in the neighborhood with a trampoline, so his house was a popular hangout spot on those long summer days, even if we had to interact with his little brother who had a tendency to bite people. One day we were getting into our usual mischief when he mentioned a new thing he had on the computer. I got those emulators working. The what? It's got a bunch of old games and stuff. Which ones? All of them. We gathered around the family computer as he scrolled through the ROMs. He loaded up Super Mario World, and my brain couldn't compute. This was a game for the TV, for the Super Nintendo. How was this on the computer? Have you seen this one? He loaded up a game called Final Fantasy II. I had heard the name before, but I didn't know anything about it. We watched the opening cutscene. A man in blue armor soared across the sky in a flying ship. He landed in a remote village and stole a crystal, harming its defenders in the process. He arrived at the kingdom and questioned its ruler about the morality of taking things by force, only to be dismissed from his post immediately. I had never seen anything like it. We played for a little longer. We fought enemies, but not in the usual way. We selected commands from a menu and watched our characters carry them out. What was this game? I went home and dug out the ancient hand-me-down laptop a family friend had given me. I scavenged around looking for an emulator of my own. After some trial and error, I got it running. I started my own playthrough of Final Fantasy II. I was mesmerized. Its story was much darker than anything I had ever seen up until that point. It was a story about betrayal, destiny, corruption, and featured lots and lots of death. I wasn't the most skilled gamer. Selecting actions instead of performing them myself made it so I could experience more of its epic story. I had experienced turn-based games before, but my lifelong love of the genre truly started in that stuffy room at my friend's house during a hot summer afternoon in 2004. A few weekends later, I went to his house and we ended up in front of the computer again. This time, he pulled up Final Fantasy III. The ominous opening, the mechs trudging through the snowstorm, arriving at the town and destroying it, fighting a monster, awakening to that music, sneaking out of the town you just helped destroy against your will. For the rest of the day, that opening sequence was all I could think about. How intriguing and mysterious and dark it was. I couldn't get it out of my mind. I went home and downloaded a ROM of Final Fantasy III, and after that point, the hand-me-down laptop stopped working for good. I had heard horror stories about downloading sketchy things from sketchy websites, and my heart sank when I realized I might have done just that. My Final Fantasy II characters would never finish their quest, and my Final Fantasy III characters would never begin theirs. I had killed them in my greed. Nevertheless, the concept of the role-playing game captured my imagination. I heard about so many fantastic entries in this genre. If you thought Final Fantasy II was good, wait until you play 7. Titles would cycle through online forums. Chrono Trigger, Breath of Fire, Star Ocean, Tales of, Earthbound, Wild Arms, Suikoden, Lunar. Hey, did you know that Marth from Smash Bros. Is from Fire Emblem? An RPG? Except, there was a problem. With emulation off the table and not being old enough to buy stuff online, my only hope was that a copy of one of these legendary games would cycle through the local used game store. They never did. No one in proximity to the book and music exchange was willing to part with their beloved turn-based RPGs, assuming they had them to begin with. On the off chance one did appear, it would be out of my price range and quickly snatched up by someone else. So these games lived as legends for me. These were supposedly immaculate titles that were just like my beloved Final Fantasies, only better, weirder, so good you wouldn't believe. The August 2005 issue of Nintendo Power arrived around the time I was about to start the 7th grade. In it, there was a multi-page article about the grand return of one of the most legendary RPG series of all time. The first game in its series in over a decade. From that moment, I knew I had to get my hands on the latest and greatest RPG. I needed Lunar Dragon Song. If you're aware of Lunar Dragon Song, you probably know it as one of the most infamous RPGs ever made, a blemish on the beloved Lunar series, a certified dud in the DS library. Lunar Dragon Song is such a curious case because it takes the established JRPG formula and executes everything in the most irritating way possible. The player takes control of Jian, a delivery boy who lives in a quaint seaside town. He's a human in a land where beast men reign supreme. Lucia is his friend who is a girl. She is kind-hearted and has a knack for healing magic. Along the way, they meet more companions and get caught up in the great conflict between humans and beastmen, the rise of the Vile Tribe, and the legend of the Four Dragons. The game looks and feels like a typical turn-based RPG. Gian travels from location to progress the story. If he comes into contact with an enemy, he and his allies enter a battle. They have to choose the right actions to ensure that they deal the most damage. Now, these are two basic actions for an RPG to have: move in the overworld and fight in the battles. But Lunar Dragonsong makes these two things more cumbersome than they really have to be. Wait, how? It's just moving and selecting, right? Well, in a battle, the player is most likely going to default to their basic attack. They can select it from each character's menu, but they cannot select which enemy will be at the receiving end of that attack. This streamlines the battles and, in theory, makes them easier, but in practice, it strips away basic interactivity. Take this battle, for example. Gian and Lucia face off against some bugs and an ape with a club. Is it better to take care of the weaker enemies first, or the stronger enemy first? This is a simple decision to make, but it is a decision. The game asks the player a question, and they have to answer it. Except Lunar Dragonsong doesn't allow the player to give their input. Gian will attack whoever he wants to attack. This essentially boils the battles down into pressing the A button over and over again. A. This game features an auto battle system where the fights progress without your input, and really, there's not much difference, like, at all. It will be hours before you get a special attack. Hours! The only thing the player has to keep track of is their character's health. But even then, Lunar Dragonsong makes another baffling choice. Basic locomotion hurts the player. That's right, Gian and company can walk and run in the overworld, and running rapidly depletes the character's health. So there is a way to traverse the map more quickly, but it comes at a cost. This doesn't cost stamina points, it costs health points, the things you need to stay alive. If I had to justify why they did this, my best guess is that it de-incentivizes avoiding the battles. Lunar Dragonsong doesn't have random encounters, instead each enemy appears on the map. If you're faster, you can outrun some of the enemies. So maybe it's a way to make the player not run everywhere? But then again, it hurts to run no matter what. Want to run around a town, or in an area without any threats? It'll cost you. So the player strolls through these environments one sluggish step at a time. The run button sits in reach, taunting the player. The battles are basic and don't require much thought. After they're over, it's back to the overworld, then back to the battles. One is slow, the other is thoughtless. Okay, so the game is dull. So what? Well, I don't think it fully illustrates how tedious Dragonsong's progression is. Let's do a play-by-play of the opening hour, shall we? The game starts with Gian in his hometown. He has to find Lucia. Okay, cool, let's check the town square. Nothing. What about the docks? Nope, maybe she's at work. Not here either. Let's check all the shops, the restaurant, and the houses. Everyone asks where Lucia is. Hey man, I don't know either. But then there's one guy who mentions seeing Lucia in the town square. But I was just there, but okay, let's go back. And there's a parasol, and Lucia. Even though I had visited this location multiple times, Lucia wasn't there because I hadn't talked to this one person in this one random house. I know this is a common video game thing, but to get hit with it right out of the gate, oh man, we're in for it. We get a package and are told to take it to a village to the other side of the Thieves' Woods. We leave and the package gets stolen. I guess we are in the Thieves' Woods after all. Great. The game suggests going to the village anyway to get information. I can follow directions, so I follow the signs and arrived at the village, and same thing. I talk to everyone, but nobody says anything helpful. I talk to this guy in the big house overlooking the village, but he says to leave him alone. I meet another villager who says to talk to the guy in the big house. So I return, and still nothing. People mention a dragon, so I head back to the woods and find a sealed temple. Maybe now he'll say something, but no. Okay, people are mentioning another temple. Let's scour the woods, and okay, there are some people near where we started, and it's a dead end. Great. So let's go back to the village and talk to the elder, and there's a Sasquatch? What? And the rocks are cleared, somehow. So let's leave the village and head back to the camp, and the rocks are actually cleared. We can now continue with our journey. So that's up, across, back, down, up, down, just to make it to the third screen of the Thieves' Woods. Sure, if you know what you're supposed to do, this can be streamlined a bit, but if you follow the directions the game gives you, you will be crisscrossing this map multiple times. And remember, you will walk. You will not run. You will press A, then A, then A, then A, then A. This is the basic loop of Lunar Dragon Song, and this is only the beginning. During the first semester of 7th grade, each day began with home ec. It was more or less a study hall that sometimes featured sewing. I sat at a table with 3 of my friends and chatted about things we had going on. The stressors of school, puberty, and family troubles, and the escape of friends, cartoons, and, of course, video games. Being the annoying kid that I was, I would find a way to bring up my anticipation for the new Lunar game any way I could. Have you played Kingdom Hearts? Is it like the acclaimed RPG series Lunar that's getting a new game this month? I was not popular. As September came to a close, I saved up all the money I could and begged my mom to take me to Best Buy. I scoured the video game aisles. On the edge sat new releases. Among them was Lunar Dragon Song. At long last, I had the thing I had been waiting for. Once home, I raced through my homework, my mind fixated on the epic journey I was about to embark on. I sat down with my DS in hand and met Gian for the first time. He wandered around and looked for Lucia. He left town and got his package stolen. When the first fight began, my little mind was blown. This wasn't like in Final Fantasy where the battles were flat. This was in 3D. Sort of. Gian and Lucia got into battle after battle, fighting their way through the Thieves' Woods. By the time we made it to the farming village, it was late. I knew this was only the beginning, but I was enthralled. The following day, I talked to a friend on the school bus. I got the new Lunar game. The new what? Lunar. It's on the DS. It's really cool. It's like Final Fantasy, but better. Better than Final Fantasy VII? Final Fantasy VII hadn't come through the used game store. I heard it was great and knew it was famous, but I had been unable to play it myself. But this new Lunar game was something special. Way better. In the home ec room, I subjected my ravings onto new ears. This game was incredible, unbelievable. It was the first Lunar game in over 10 years. The last one came out when I was 2. Isn't that crazy? No, I have not played the originals, but this new one is amazing. Oh yeah? What happens in it? Well, okay, I'm not that far into it. There are these cat people and 4 legendary dragons, and the battles are in 3D. I sat through the entire school day dreaming about Lunar Dragon Song and the possibilities contained within. I was playing the greatest game I would ever play. I could feel it. Back home, I loaded up my game and wandered around the Thieves' Woods. I struggled to find out where to go, but I got the village elder to clear the rocks for me. At a certain point, though, I realized something wasn't happening. My characters were still level 1. Gian and Lucia weren't getting stronger. The way Lunar Dragon Song handles character leveling is weird. On the bottom screen, there's this little icon of Gian that determines what the party will receive at the end of every battle. If it's blue, the party will get spoils that can be sold to buy gear and items. The game doesn't dole out money directly, so this is the main way to get more cash. If the icon is orange, Gian will look like he's praying. Instead of perishing, defeated enemies will be raptured in a ring of holy light, and the party will receive a blessing from the goddess Althena, the deity that watches over this world. The more the characters grow in the goddess's favor, the stronger they will become. The game essentially has 2 leveling systems, secular and spiritual. At least that's what I like to call them. The game asks if you want goods or experience points. For some reason, Lunar Dragon Song makes the player pick what reward they would rather have. In fairness, it is a novel way to structure a leveling system. Since the battles are so monotonous, it's at least some way for the player to strategize. But what this means in practice is the game has double the amount of grinding one would normally find in a game like this. You have to walk through each area at least twice in order to stay strong and keep your inventory full. Well, kind of, because even this isn't implemented especially well. On every screen with enemies, there are these blue chests that can't be opened. If the player wins a battle, one of these tiny squares on the bottom screen will be checked off. Each box represents an enemy in the vicinity, and defeating all of them will unlock the blue chest, which contains some sort of useful item. This only works in spiritual mode, so you get both experience and a new toy. Now, these chests are optional, but it's the most efficient way to get new weapons and armor. If you want to buy them from the shop, you're going to be wandering around in secular mode for tens of minutes, scraping up enough change to buy the next upgrade. Except, get this, Lunar Dragon Song punishes you for leveling up too much. As Gian gets stronger, so too do the enemies they fight. There's no way to overpower the early game enemies by stats alone. In order to get the upper hand, you'll need good weapons and armor. The party's equipment is arguably more important than their base stats. But then, Dragon Song has this fun thing where certain enemies can break and steal your equipment. Don't get too attached to your gear because it can be taken away at any moment. This isn't a weapon durability thing. This is just a middle finger. You'll become insanely underpowered out of nowhere, and getting an equivalent piece of equipment back can take forever because you're back to grinding for spoils to sell or blue chests to raid. But we're not done, because midway through the party will meet new people, including Gabrielle. She brings some much needed muscle to the team, as she can use Wolverine-style claws. But she starts at level 1, so the player is forced to switch to spiritual mode and level her up, which doesn't take too long, but that's assuming she can survive the battles as a level 1 character. The enemy's strength is based off of Jian's current level, not anyone else's. And this isn't a one-off quirk because they do it again when Flora the Archer joins the party, only then it's worse because it's much later in the game. So really, the whole system that makes the party stronger is borderline nonsensical. It adds so much extra legwork to a game that's already dull. Though there is a way to spice up the battles. They come in the form of cards. Defeating certain enemies will make them drop pictures of themselves, which allows the party to use their abilities in future battles. Now, if you've been burned by Castlevania Circle of the Moon and its stingy card drop rates, you're probably thinking this is going to be annoying. And it's okay. I mean, if you're not a completionist, you'll be fine. A lot of the cards end up trivializing a lot of the battles even more so than usual. It's like the game was balanced so that the player could ignore the cards, but the cards are the only things that make the battles interesting. So that's even more grinding for item drops. Yay! To recap, the battles are simple. You can't run without penalty. The overworld progression is confusing. There is twice as much grinding as usual. The player is punished for gaining too much experience. There are rare critical item drops that break the game even further. Good equipment can be snatched away for no reason. The game feels padded beyond belief. Lunar Dragon Song has so many annoyances, so many little things that compound on one another to make this game as irritating as possible. Well, at least the story's good, right? Right? One of the things that originally endeared me to RPGs was their focus on character. Since these games tended to have long runtimes and contain a lot of talking, there were more opportunities to get to know the characters better. There's something special about slowing down and enjoying the journey with your party of misfits. Since my access to RPGs was limited at the time, I had to make do with what I could find. One of the games I played a lot when I was in the 6th grade was Evolution Worlds. I had no idea what this game was, but the guy on the front looked cool, it was in stock at the used game store, and the back said it was an RPG. Sold. Evolution Worlds is 2 Dreamcast games truncated and glued together. But I didn't know. You had your boy with this mech arm thing and a girl smacking dudes with a frying pan. This was a world with these mysterious mechanical weapons and some conspiracy at the center of it all. Even though I wouldn't consider Evolution Worlds to be a must-play or anything like that, it's one of those games that captured my imagination. If I had a weapon like this, what would mine look like? Which of my friends would I want to take on a dungeon-crawling adventure? The first half of the game concluded with its huge reveal. Spoilers for Evolution Worlds and the first Evolution game, I guess. The mysterious silent girl the main kid is sworn to protect is actually the reincarnation of a goddess named Evolutia. That's why she was able to use healing magic. That's why people try to co-opt her powers for themselves. To my 11-year-old mind, this felt like such a cool twist. It gave greater importance to everything that had happened. I hadn't seen a game do something like that before. The following spring, I learned the lesson every Final Fantasy fan learns at some point. I acquired Final Fantasy 1 and 2 Dawn of Souls for the Game Boy Advance, thinking I finally had a copy of the game with the guy on the airship, only to get something completely different. The game I was after was actually 4, but it was released originally as 2, you know how it goes. But I still played through Final Fantasy 1, that classic adventure about 4 heroes restoring 4 elemental crystals. Earth, fire, water, and wind. It was a straightforward fable, but I had a good time with it. I even liked the actual Final Fantasy II. Half a year later, I was midway through my playthrough of Lunar Dragon Song. Jian was the cool acrobat, Lucia was the mage girl, and Gabby was the badass with the claws, though she did yearn for peace between the humans and the beastmen. My middle school self really liked her for some reason. I had characters to latch onto. We were going to take on the Vile Tribe and the 4 dragons. We would defeat the dragon of fire, wind, earth, and water. Wait, this is a lot like Final Fantasy 1. Well, okay, fine. 4 dragons, each representing a different element. I had my scrappy little party, and then it's revealed that Lucia isn't just a mage. She's the reincarnation of the goddess Athena. Everyone yearns after her powers, and it's up to Jian to save her. Huh. I sat on the side of the gym with my fellow nerdy friends as the rest of our classmates played basketball. Our recess period was usually spent like this, chatting, making fun of each other, recounting epic matches of Halo or Smash, and occasionally graffitiing the bleachers. It's always your mage girl, I proclaimed. Like, literally, in every game, your mage girl is like some ancient spirit or something. No one knew what I was talking about. So, like, in the new Lunar game, there's this mage girl in your party, and she's like the reincarnation of this god, and it's like, why is it always your mage girl? I don't know. Hey, did you know if you shoot a bunch of cops in Grand Theft Auto, the army shows up? Whoa, that's badass. I was still a little defensive about Lunar Dragon Song, wanting to seem like a connoisseur of cutting-edge titles. But the reveal midway through that Lucia was actually the reincarnated goddess felt hollow. 4 elemental guardians, amnesia, beastmen, a group literally called the Vile Tribe. Something about it all just felt tired. The word I didn't have was cliché. Lunar Dragon Song uses tropes that at one point were fresh, but it's slowly but surely gotten played out. Even in my limited experience with the genre, Dragon Song's story felt stale. Jian never got more interesting. The novelty of a shirtless girl with cat ears wore off pretty quick. The Archer character brought no personality to the party. The potential of this story, this grand epic I had imagined embarking on, never came to be. This was a cliché story about paper-thin characters traveling through generic environments. There was no interesting villain to rally against, no fun theming, no interpersonal character relationships, no attempt to tackle a grander theme. It wasn't funny or sentimental or cool. It was just there. Despite all of its flaws, Lunar Dragon Song is not a badly made game. It's a bad game, but it's not completely broken, if that makes sense. The balancing is way off, but the game still works. There aren't any catastrophic bugs or anything like that, at least as far as I can tell. The characters and environments are generic, but they're still pleasing to look at. The game does everything it can to annoy the player, but it's not unfairly difficult. The battles are boring, but there's a handy fast forward mapped to the shoulder button to make them more brisk. Every problem with Lunar Dragon Song was put there on purpose. The people who made this game knew what they were doing, they just executed everything as poorly as possible. This puts the game in kind of a strange position. The game has way too many problems to be a slept-on gem, despite it having a few interesting ideas, such as the blue chests. It can't be a generic, unmemorable RPG either. The game actively works against the player in so many ways, making the experience much more frustrating than it needs to be, but to call the game complete trash feels disingenuous too, since it does look and sound and run pretty good. The main problem with Lunar Dragon Song is that its issues aren't counterbalanced with anything else. This game has boatloads of annoyances and problems, but working through each of them rewards the player with a bunch of mediocre at best content. It's frustrating because it doesn't take much to see how it could become a decent game. What makes Chrono Trigger great? Well, the whole thing, really. Pinpointing all of the aspects that make Chrono Trigger a masterpiece could take forever. You could write a whole thesis on it. How could we improve big rigs over-the-road racing? Throw out the whole thing and start over? Actually finish it? I don't know. This game is a complete non-starter. But how could we improve Lunar Dragon Song? Well, I have some ideas. First, let's make it so the characters get both items and experience after every battle. Let's keep the blue chests though, that's a neat addition. Put the good items in those and balance it so that if the player opens them all, they'll be strong enough to overcome anything. Let's make the pathfinding more obvious. If you need to talk to people in a certain order, let's spell that out a little more. Let's also make it so you can pick who you attack in the battles. This would give Flora the Archer more to do since she's the only one that can attack airborne enemies. Let's make it so running doesn't hurt you. Just fly that whole thing out of there. Let's also get rid of item durability since it doesn't add much of anything. Keep the cards. Cards are okay. Might need to rebalance them, but they're a nice addition. Story-wise, I think it would help if we renamed a bunch of stuff to make them more fantasy-like. I don't know, it'll add to the world building, I suppose. More importantly, the characters need to have some more interpersonal banter. And, character arcs. Let's play up the love story between Jian and Lucia. This will make them more relatable, and it'll raise the stakes when the big reveal with Lucia happens. Let's give Gabby more of an edge. Maybe she doesn't trust the human characters at first, or has some sort of vendetta against them. Instead of having her be tolerant from the start, have her learn what being an ally truly means. Could be a nice subplot. Flora, man, I have no idea. Just give Flora a personality. There. I'm not saying that the resulting game would be anything stellar, but it would at least be somewhat more engaging than what we ultimately got. If you're even remotely interested in games as an art form, I'm sure there are several titles that inspired you at some point, something that changed your perspective on what a game could be. Speaking personally, there are classics that I think everyone should play. There are personal favorites that I'll hold close forever. Almost every day I learn about a new game that sounds really cool, and it pains me to know that I'll never be able to play them all. But at the same time, I do think there's a lot to learn from stuff that no one recommends. The stuff that falls through the cracks that isn't great, but isn't an outright laughingstock. This is where Lunar Dragonsong lives. It takes many genre touchpoints and questions why they're needed in the first place. What if we changed how leveling works? What if we de-incentivized traversal? What if we streamlined the battles as much as possible? None of these experiments pay off, but they do help emphasize why certain conventions are there to begin with. What if a game did everything right, except the basics? Now that Dragonsong has made these mistakes, no one has to make them again. So, in a weird way, I do kind of recommend Lunar Dragonsong, if for no other reason than to see what happens when a genre gets pulled apart and glued back together in the most haphazard way possible. It's not a game I enjoy, but it's a game that made me see video games in a new light. Why wasn't I enjoying it back in the day? Why do I still have fond memories of it, despite everything? The autumn marched on, and the weather turned colder. The first snow of the year dusted my friend's trampoline. Soon, Christmas lights would dot the street. The early mornings waiting for the bus grew darker and more chilly. I stopped talking about my recent obsession. I went from playing it every day to only a few days a week, then once a week, then not at all. I never finished Lunar Dragonsong. I hadn't realized it wasn't fun, I just didn't want to play it anymore. While on another trip to Best Buy, I wandered off to the video game section, and there it was. Final Fantasy IV Advance. This was the one. This was the game with the guy on the airship, the one with the dark story, the one that ignited my interest in RPGs. Like I had done months before, I excitedly popped my new game into my DS. It was just as I remembered. An airship flies over a broken world. The man in blue armor steals a crystal. He's dismissed from his post. He wanders through a cave. He enacts another tragedy, this time unintentionally. They continue on their quest, step after step, battle after battle. It was beautiful. One of the worst winter storms on record happened that Christmas. We were shut inside. The roads had iced over, but the power was still on. During that stretch of time, Final Fantasy IV kept me company. That and Dance Dance Revolution Mario mix, of course. I met new characters and traveled to faraway worlds and tackled fearsome foes. The protagonist grew into a new person, leaving his old ways behind and shedding his dark armor. The party grew stronger, more capable. A classic RPG experience if there ever was one. As the old year ticked over to the new one, Lunar Dragonsong was but a distant memory. To this day, I have never met another person in real life who has actually played it. Yet, as I ventured into online forums, I learned it was quite the punching bag. Lunar Dragonsong showed me how hype could cloud judgment, how you don't have to force an opinion, that it's okay to admit you're wrong. It inadvertently asked me why I love role-playing games. What about them do I like? Do I actually like them, or do I like the idea of them? It taught me how to appreciate those amazing experiences. Part of me wonders if I would have liked Final Fantasy IV as much had I not been fresh off a botched run of Lunar Dragonsong. As we explore the realm of games, as we try to find new favorites, new experiences we will treasure forever, it's important to remember that there's value in titles that fall short, that every game has something to offer. It's strange to think that I might be the only person in the world who learned this much from Lunar Dragonsong.